Hi, everybody. I'm Sarah Karish. I'm a group leader in Northern Virginia and Fairfax County, Virginia. I'm very excited. I'm just our Zoom manager for today, but we have two excellent speakers, Saraly Gonzalez and Juan Rios, are going to be talking to us about fostering inclusivity in your chapters and communities. And we'll have time at the end for some Q&A. If you have questions during the presentation, go ahead and drop them in the chat, and Molly is going to monitor that and make sure everyone's questions get answered. So I'll just turn it over to Saraly and Juan.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you, Sarah.
Welcome, everyone.
Welcome, everyone.
We have some feedback. Here we go. All right. So my name is Saraly Gonzalez. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm calling from the original lands of the Susquehannock Nation and the people of Standing Stone. So I am in Huntington, Pennsylvania, studying at Juniata College. And so about me, I am the daughter of Mexican immigrants. So the bottom left picture is a picture that I took on a trip to Mexico after I graduated high school at the National Anthropology Museum in Mexico City. Picture in the bottom right is me and my teammates. I'm also an athlete. I play soccer in college. Top right is a picture of, I've seen a picture of what we call the cliffs near campus. So I like spending a lot of time outdoors. And I have an echo. Can everyone hear me okay? Is everything okay? Awesome. So top right, I like spending time outdoors. I like to walk, run, bike, whatever. The middle picture is the Eiffel Tower. Love to travel, and I also have a minor in French. And the picture on the left is my cat named Midnight. Juan?
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Saraly. Hi, everyone. I'm Juan Rios, and currently some things about me is I'm calling from New York City in Brooklyn at this moment. I joined CCL in 2019, and since then I have become the liaison for New York City's 9th District for Yvette Clarke, Congresswoman Yvette Clarke, for New York State as well. I'm also a member of the Latinx Catholic Outreach Team, which what we do is we give faith-based presentations to the Spanish community. And also I'm a main presenter on the team. And outside of CCL, I studied film and TV at the New York Conservatory for Dramatic Arts. So as you can see there, I have an associate's degree in film and TV. And also my parents, they come from Colombia, the city of Cali. They come from around that area. And that picture of a husky is, my favorite dog breed is Siberian Huskies. And my family has a Siberian Husky and her name is Maya. So and Siberian Huskies have always been one of my favorite dog breeds. So that's Maya. I love her and I miss her as well. Hopefully she's doing well. Okay, so we'll get this presentation started now with some community agreements.
Thank you, Juan. So we want to set the standards for this session. So we will actively listen in order to learn and understand. Conversations will be respectful always. Show your true self. Honesty is the best policy. We won't always agree, and that is okay. We won't always have the answers to every question. We are all learning together, and we agree to have an open mind. So if you agree with these community agreements, throw a thumbs up or an I agree in the chat. Go ahead, Juan.
So we want to also ask all of you, the audience, that this is a small little quiz that we gave as to what do you guys think is most important for diversity moving forward. If you think it's A, ethnicity, race, gender, sexual orientation, etc. If you think it's important to include all of those, or if you think including option B, employee or career experiences is the most important for new volunteers in diversity. Or if you think it's both, if you think that's the most important. And I want to give you a little bit of time to think over those options. Which of them do you think is the most important? And if you chose both, the answer C, then that is correct. Both. Oh, no, yeah, we see we got in the chat there. Everybody thinks both. That's great. So the answer is both. Both are needed, and they are very important for implementing diversity into a volunteer organization, a company, a community. All of those are important because we need to, oh, great. That's great that everybody thinks it's both. So those things are more important for diversity. And also we want to take a little bit of time for Saraly to tell us more about Black History Month that we're currently celebrating.
Yeah, thank you. So to honor and celebrate Black History Month, we wanted to highlight a quote from Audre Lorde, who was an American writer, feminist, civil rights activist. She was self-described as a Black lesbian mother, warrior, poet who dedicated her life and creative talent to confronting and addressing injustices. So here's her quote. "You do not have to be me in order for us to fight alongside each other. I do not have to be you to recognize that our wars are the same. What we must do is commit ourselves to some future that can include each other and to work toward the future with the particular strengths of our individual identities. And in order for us to do this, we must allow each other our differences at the same time as we recognize our sameness." Go ahead, Juan.
Thank you, Saraly. So that was our brief introduction to get all of you guys in the mindset of what we're going to be discussing today, which are also the three main points. So diversity in CC, we're going to be discussing the data on the Appalachia states for diversity, how diverse they are, tips to creating an inclusive chapter culture, and we're going to discuss with you some next steps that you can take for diversity.
So CCL's diversity and inclusion. This information was provided by our data and strategy director, Tony Serna. So here you can see how over time we have leveled off to have more equal quantiles. In 2020, 24% of our volunteers were under 25 years old, which was an increase of about 7% from 2019. 29% were 26 through 40 years old, also an increase from 2019. 24% our volunteers are 41 through 65 years old, and 24% of our volunteers are over 65 years old. So this shows that we are getting stronger with recruiting younger people, and they are joining at a national rate that is above the national population. By political affiliation, we still are largely Democratic, but we still do foster political affiliation in our diversity plan, and it's one of our focuses as well. So in 2020, 87% of our volunteers were Democrats, 7.6% independents, and around 5% were Republicans. And by race, so here we do see an increase of people of color that were volunteers. In 2020, we had 77% white, 25% people of color. And that was a 12% increase from 2019. It's also important to note that in 2013, when we first started tracking this, we were at 94% white and 6% people of color. We still have a long way to go, considering that the national average is 40% people of color, but I think we're doing some great steps to get there.
These statistics show, and this is proof because of the initiatives that CCL has already taken. And as you can see on the screen here, these are some initiatives that CCL has already taken that show the stats as to where we are today. And one that I'm involved in as well is the cross collaborations among action teams in the Spanish community. So the Latino, the Catholic action team, those, the faith, and some of the faith ones too. Those are some initiatives that I'm a part of, and I'm proud of those. And we have several other ones that everybody, if you're interested in becoming a part of these initiatives, you're more than welcome to For the Spanish language efforts, CCL also has a Spanish resources page, and we have a translated page on the CCL website. We have several diversity action teams already, such as Latinos and climate and culture. We have different faith-based teams. We have action teams that come across nearly every spectrum. So action teams are also a great example of some of the diversity that we have within CCL. As well as me being a part of the diversity, equity, and inclusion team, we have our community ambassadors. Myself being a part of them. I'm in the Northeast region as well as Appalachia region. I also work alongside Sue Hughes Smith in the Northeast region as well. She's based in Rochester, and I'm in New York City. We have John Buchner, who's in Orange County, California. Lydia Lynn Coltai, the Third Coast region in Oxford, Mississippi. Shelly Bonato, the Tornadoes region in Fayetteville, Arkansas. And we have Jess Wilbur in the Great Lakes region of Michigan. And we are on the lookout for more ambassadors. People, if you are interested to join the diversity, equity, and inclusion team, we're on the lookout for more people. So feel free to email Karina. Her email is on the slide below. If you are interested in becoming an ambassador or finding out more about what it is our team does and how we operate. And now Saraly is going to go with us. She's going to come through with us and explain the Appalachia region's diversity.
Thank you. So for the following slides, we use census data to see the racial makeup of your areas. It's also important to note that Hispanic and Latinos do racially identify as white in the census. So in Pennsylvania, we see around 80% white, 11% Black, and 3.5% Asia alone, with 3% being some or other race or two or more races. And here you see is the maps broken up by county. On a national level, there are 18.4% Hispanic or Latino in the United States, but around PA, it's 8%. But in the Eastern, you see Lehigh County and Berks County as the top two, with around 24% population of Hispanic and Latinos, with Northampton, Monroe, and Lucerne being around 16%. Virginia, you see 67% white, 19% Black or African American, 7% Asian, and again around 3% some or other race alone, or two or more races. So here is 10% in Virginia of Hispanic and Latinos. The counties with the highest concentration of Hispanic and Latinos are Fairfax, London, Loudoun, Prince William County, and they have around 40%, but also it's important to note that in the neighboring counties, they do see an increase. West Virginia, we have 93% white, 4% Black, and around 2% two or more races. And around 1.5% around the state, and with the mostly highly dense counties are Berkeley, Jefferson, Gilmer, with about 6% Hispanic Latino populations in these areas. Kentucky is around 87% white, 8% Black, and 2% Asian alone, with also around 2% two or more races. And then the top counties in Kentucky are Graves, Christian, Fayette, Bourbon, and Woodford, with about 10%. Here you see it's kind of more spread out. So you do see around 6% and 4% more evenly, without having just to have them being just in a clutter around the same county. So the statewide is around 4%. And Tennessee is 77% white, 17% Black, and 2% Asian alone, with two or more races also around 2%. And you see 6% in Tennessee statewide, with this counties being Montgomery, Davidson, Rutherford, and the Bedford area, with the neighboring DeKalb and Warren area. It's important to note that in these maps, even if you don't see your county and area being very, a high percentage, it still doesn't mean that diversity should be a main focus, because it really should be a main focus, and you should still see who's around the community, because Go ahead, Juan.
Thank you, Saraly. So we understand that there are some people in your chapters or your regions that could hesitate or not sure as to how to approach diversity at CCL. And in this slide, these are some of the common barriers that we see here in CCL or even beyond in terms of how people aren't sure or some challenges that they face. And instead of seeing this as an obstacle, see this as an opportunity. So we can get back to more on this in a little bit when it tips, but I want you guys to keep in mind, look closely at these common barriers that you're witnessing and try to think for yourselves, what are some of these common barriers that you're seeing the most in your chapter or your region? And now we want to answer the main question of why diversity in CCL? Why is this important? How is this going to help us? And I'm sure all of you here are on the same page with me as when we think as a lobby group, we should be prioritizing diversity right at this moment. This is a very good time for us to do so, mainly because we are a grassroots organization. And please let me know, everyone, if you want to take the time to read this quote right here in beginning in our work as conservationists. If you guys want to take the time to read that quote, I'll give you a little bit of time to read it.
One, I think it might be a good idea maybe to read it out loud to those who are maybe on the cell phone or on their phones as well.
All right. Thank you, Saraly. Sure, then I'll read it. So in our work as conservationists, we can't think about creating an inclusive outdoors without addressing the police brutality against the Black community daily in public spaces. We cannot protect land without acknowledging that unaffordable housing leads to the sprawl that eats away at those lands. We can't address wildfires without acknowledging the sovereignty of the tribal nations who were managing them for centuries before 1492. We can't have public buy-in for decisions based on climate science if the public does not have a scientific education. When environmentalists only think in terms of environmental benefits without the larger social context, every step we take will lead to a backslide. The same is true for trying to make change in every field. Now, this is an important quote, and this is something that us at CCL stand behind. It's important to understand the background of where we're coming from, and it's important to know the history of what we're trying to protect. The opinion piece here is environmental policy must prioritize voices of color. We must hear their backgrounds and their stories because it's important for them to be part of the solution. We want to create a livable world for everybody. And everyone here knows and understands that our solution is bipartisan. So this solution is for everybody. This is for everyone, and we want everyone to be a part of this. So moving forward, CCL will be in a very powerful position if we invite as many people as we can to come to our party and to suit the needs of environmental justice. So now, Saraly will explain the diversity of how it needs inclusion and anti-racism.
Thank you, Juan. So what's the difference between diversity, inclusion, and anti-racism? So diversity includes all the ways in which people differ. It encompasses all the different characteristics that make one individual or group different from another. It also involves different ideas, perspectives, and values. Whereas inclusion is authentically bringing traditionally excluded individuals and or groups into processes, activities, and decision or policy making in a way that shares power. Anti-racism is defined as the work of actively opposing racism by advocating for changes in political, economic, and social life. Anti-racism is set up in opposition to individual racist behaviors and impacts. So inclusion should be the goal. Diversity with that concept alone reinforces the idea of asking a token person of color to diversify a project and does not signify actual change. A constant environment of inclusion will welcome and attract diverse volunteers. Diverse voices need to be supported once they join and beyond. So this further supports how we should be focusing on inclusion and changing all of our mindsets, our chapters, to welcome diverse members, especially.
Now, hopefully all of you are very motivated to go out and speak to other people in other communities and want to get started. But before that, we want to share some tips for inclusivity in your chapters and communities that you can start with. And the first one being cultural competency. So before you approach a community or request their support, it's important to understand their cultural and historical context, as mentioned in the quote previously. You also want to think of how can you practice cultural competency. And it's important to have respectful communication. Do not make any assumptions. And to put it simply, do not judge a book by its cover. A key one is the use of gender neutral pronouns, such as fo.
Juan, I think we're having some voice.
The pronouns, they help us facilitate effective communication to those whose gender identities are imperative and not always obvious. They are also powerful enough to communicate our cultural, linguistic, and ethnic identities that brings diversity and inclusion to our chapters. So be familiar with the current and past issues that are affecting these communities. A great one for everyone, including here, is self-awareness. Be aware of how can you practice self-awareness. Be aware of where you're coming from. So some of the questions that we do get asked a lot by volunteers on how to bring diversity into the chapter is, how do I talk to a person of color? How do I ask someone to join our chapter without them feeling like we want them just to increase our diversity for our own personal gain? How do we make people feel as if we're not trying to use them? And although these questions, they do come from a good place, we understand that because we understand that people want to approach this very safely in a respectful way. And we appreciate that people want to ask these questions to start bringing up the discussion as to how to bring up diversity. And the answer is, don't overthink these questions so much. The important key here to think about is effective communication. Talk to these people like everyone else. Talk to them in a respectful way. Know that you want to help. You're coming from a good place. And most likely they will be willing to help you. They will be willing to help us out. They're people just like us. So we should not think of this in any other way. Just approach them like everyone else, because building a connection is what matters the most. So how can you practice self-awareness? Respectful communication, asking ourselves the questions first. So think before you speak. Work on addressing your own implicit biases. That's something that we also would encourage for each chapters to do, is to perhaps measure, see where everybody's mindset is in your chapter. So we encourage you that we left a link right here by Harvard EDU, an implicit bias test. If every chapter's feeling that they want to take a test to see where they are, we recommend you to take this kind of test. And the Diversity and Equity Inclusion team has created a checklist of behaviors that each chapter can go ahead and start implementing today. So we have inclusive, these 3 examples, such as going out of the way to make others feel welcome, showing genuine concern towards team members, making an extra effort to understand problems faced by others, versus we have the exclusive, which is downplaying the value of others' contributions, not giving them credit, interrupting or cutting others off while speaking, or saying, I know, failing to acknowledge or showing little interest in the ideas or opinion expressed by someone else. You don't have to relate with that person on everything, but you can show interest. You can motivate people and let them know that their voice matters, their opinions matter, their ideas can lead to something. So we encourage you to checklist these behaviors when you're in your discussions. If you're going inclusive, then you're in the right path. If you're going exclusive, then there are some things that could be thought differently. So some things that Overall, that you want to avoid moving forward in discussions little by little, speaking over other people, let people express their ideas, making assumptions about a person based on what we see or what we hear. So their accent, their dress. We want to avoid judging a book by its cover. So we want to judge more by the content of character and ideas. We do not want to be lacking empathy. We want to have empathy. We want to create a safe space for everybody. One where your ideas or your opinions, they're not thrown out or they're not judged. We want to create a space where we don't feel judged, because we don't just want to listen, we want to be heard. And that's something that everybody wants in a space where they can, in a creative space, a place that's in progress. Talk more, listen less. Hear more. Hear people where they're coming from. Ignore your privilege. So if you come from a rich background, still be humble. Be humble no matter where you go. And avoid gender-specific words, which I won't use some example. I won't use any examples, but I'm sure everybody here can think of some words that we want to avoid entirely. Because the main message is small choices, small things, they make a big impact. Big things come in little sizes. And this is true for us now. Some of these, they are small. Some of them we may seem, is this necessary? It is. These will be the foundation, the building blocks that will build the progress of CCL4 diversity. We will land acknowledgement at the start of meetings, introduce yourself and include your pronouns, ask what is your cultural background when curious, and also establish community agreements at the start of every meeting, like how we did with this presentation. We agree that this will be a safe space where no one will feel judged or discriminated. These are some tips, and also Saraly will bring with us a discussion for how we can brainstorm the next steps for your community based off these tips that we just gave.
Thank you, Juan. So now we're breaking out into breakout rooms of 3, and Sarah will go ahead and get that started. There will be approximately 10 minutes, and then we'll come back for a whole group discussion. Hello, welcome back, everyone. People slowly coming back, I think.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Hey. I guess we got cut off. We got
Yeah.
Am I in the main session now? It told me I was.
I think we're back.
We're back.
This is the main session. I think everyone's back.
Okay.
Welcome back, everyone.
Hello.
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 All right, now that I think everyone back, it's time for a whole group discussion. So we're gonna share what was that like. We're gonna share experiences. You can feel free to drop it in the chat or use the raise hand function, and we'll have about 5 minutes for this whole group discussion. I also can't see the chat, so if someone who is technically supporting me or us, it'd be great to share them. Thank you.
Someone wrote in the chat that they got a nice tip about advertising group meetings in local and community newspapers.
That's awesome. I think that's especially important right now because of COVID. You can't go out and share, but so that's a great common resource.
Someone else is saying, we felt we needed to have members go to organizations such as NAACP and listen.
Looks like Tony is raising his hand.
Try unmuting, Tony.
You're muted, Tony.
Sorry.
Mute.
There we go.
You okay? Okay. anyway, I've been with CCL for 6 years now, and have tried reaching out. I've contacted the NAACP in the Louisville area, and have tried, and also some social justice groups. There's a lot of cold calling, which is not very successful at all. And to do that, we have had success with getting an endorsement from the African American Chamber of Commerce, and it seems to me like, you know, the ground has to be ready first. You know, I don't think that a lot of the minority communities don't really have an understanding about how climate change is affecting them. You know, and so they're not really ready to engage on that subject. You know, and just in talking in our little discussion, I was thinking that you know, some of the things we might emphasize, it'd be like in our area, we've had several 100-year floods in 1 year. Which flooded basements, you know, sewage going into people's basements and making a mess, and you know, and a lot of them are in the minority neighborhoods. And so, you know, if we could get out there and maybe that would be maybe a link that we can kind of show how that affect is, you know, climate change is going to affect everybody. And the other thing I think that should be emphasized, I think, is the dividend check. You know, I think it seemed like that would be a very popular thing to emphasize. And
yeah,
especially in income areas.
Thank you, Tony. We'll let Karina and then Patricia go.
Hello, everyone. What I wanted to offer was when you're thinking of outreach, and normally a lot of people have asked me this, and people just usually be like, yeah, I'm going to go to, you know, the communities of color organization. Like in the NAACP comes out often, which I'm not saying not to go there, but I'm also like inviting you to think of organizations and community groups that you may not have thought about. For example, a local church or a community that focuses on gardening that is particularly targeting people of color. Think of community gardens in different communities around the places where you live. I spend a lot of time finding out what is happening in my city, because sometimes I go and I join the city meetings, and from there I meet people. So what ended up happening when I joined the listserv for my city, I found out that there's a small community group that meets per local center where I live. And it just so happens that there's a lot of people from the African American community that go to that center. And I have made friends with them. I go to their meetings. They're about to restart the meetings actually at the end of this month. And one of them got curious after 4 or 5 months of me going to the meetings. We're like, hey, Karina, you never told us that you work for a climate organization. And that sort of, you know, sparked the interest, and I had a conversation with that particular individual about what I did. So yes, and I would definitely agree that there are a lot of communities that are not really as advanced as we are as CCLers with the climate issue. Think about us as being really high up as an organization that is focusing on solutions for climate change. A lot of the communities that you want to target, you're going to have to sit and do Climate 101. We can offer that. We are very knowledgeable people. We can offer opportunities to partner up with a group to be like, hey, let's talk about climate, and then you can give the presentation on how climate change is affecting a particular community around them. So I just wanted to offer that really quick, and I will get space to someone else. Thank you.
Thank you, Karina. So Patricia and Pam, I see you, and we have a few more slides, and then we're going to open up for discussion. So I'll get back to you guys once you finish these 2 slides. Thank you. Go ahead, Juan.
Thank you, Saraly. So overall, moving forward, a few things to remember is it's important to recognize that this work won't happen overnight. It's long-term. We will have obstacles, and we need to approach these issues with a spirit of hope. The CCL way, we need to work together on this approach. As well as inclusion is essential for the essential path forward to an equitable and efficient climate solution. Great.
And so now for actions we can all take. first one would be start the discussion or start a diversity team. If you don't think you're ready for a diversity team or discussion, start a book club. Building a team around us is the most effective way to creating institutional and community change around diverse members. Number 2 is check out the training available in the community. At the end of this, we're going to share all the links we've shared in the presentation in the chat, and so you can just save them all at once. Number 3, join or attend one of the diversity action teams. We'll also share this link that has all of our diverse action teams. A few examples are the Latino Action Team, Amplifying Indigenous Voices, the LGBTQIA and Allies Action Team, Climate and Culture, and more. Number 4 is go and find out who is around you and your community. Dissociate yourself from being a CCL member and just be curious, meet new people, find out more about who's around you. Number 5 would be attend our new monthly series, Race and Culture, Diversity Conversations. We had our first one last night with Karina, Patricia, and Donna Du. They all did a great job. It'll be on the national calendar, and the next one will be March 20th at 12 p.m. Eastern, so keep your eye out for that. Go ahead, Juan.
Thank you, Saraly. We want to close this out with this quote that inspires us all by Stacey Abrams, the former minority leader of the Georgia House of Representatives, which is, we can do this together because while individually you have purpose, together we have power. So individually, our purpose is for diversity, and together we have all the power we need to make it happen. And we do want to thank you for taking the time to listen to us today.
Great, thank you. So we have a little over 10 minutes for Q&A, but feel free to contact us with any questions, and follow our CCL_inclusion on Twitter and Instagram. Perfect, thank you. So Patricia and then Pam, if you still have anything to say, feel free to unmute yourself.
Thank you so much, and I appreciate everyone that is giving their Saturday to these beautiful individuals that have done an incredible job. And I'm not just saying that because I know them, I'm saying it because I am completely moved by this presentation and this conference. I did want to say that to the individual who talked about minorities and not having education about climate change, I did put ouch in the chat because I found that to be a little painful, because I come from a very strong Latinx community. I live along the Tex-Mex border, and I am in 3 different community groups that are fighting for climate change. And then one collaborative group that involves people from every state along the Gulf of Mexico and the global South. We incorporate Mexico and India, South Asia. So, and we're all fighting for climate change, and we're all people of color, indigenous, brown, Black people of color, BIPOC. And we are incredible, capable, intelligent people, adaptable people, and we make our basically our lives to go around educating and helping those in need that are affected by climate, especially now with what's happening with the storms. And just to let people know that you can reach out to small groups, like Karina said, churches, community gardens. Go to the public library and check out their public tag board, or even a local coffee shop. So if you're interested in things like that, there's always folks out there doing the work. Even if you take a Saturday drive around your community, you'll see people that are working in gardens or out in parks gathering. So there's plenty of opportunities for us to reach out and help one another. And thank you for the Stacey Abrams quote. I think it was really, really powerful for the last slide. Thank you.
Thank you, Patricia. Pam?
Yeah, I just had a thought that came up in the small group, and I think it follows along with some things other people are saying that I have seen in CCL emphasis on environmental justice, and some of the awareness that I have of people who are people of color, minority groups, are more concerned about that environmental justice aspect and not, you know, the carbon fee and dividend can seem sort of harder to relate in that situation. And so one of the things I know, I mentioned a webinar, Building a Bigger Tent. Apparently CCL has a series on that. And it's the idea of collaborating with other environmental groups and possibly, rather than going into another group and trying to recruit them to CCL, show them that we're willing to work with them on a common goal, something that's important to their group. And then in the process, help them appreciate the value of what we're working for also.
Thank you so much for sharing, Pam. Catherine?
Our local chapter in Roanoke, Virginia has been doing a little bit of that. We went to the electric vehicle fair last year, and I think we got more endorsements that one day and emails of people who were interested in our group than we've had anywhere else. So what you say is true.
Yeah, I agree with Karina. Miss doing community fairs. I miss going out into the community and just meeting people. Yep.
There were a few questions from the chat. Do you want to have those now?
Yeah, of course.
One from earlier was regarding the quiz that we took at the beginning. They asked, can we say that the employee-employer relationship that was referenced refers to economic status?
I think definitely. Juan, if you want to elaborate on that, on your thoughts of putting that in the slides, you can go ahead.
Yes, I saw that question earlier and I was going to say yes, it can regard to economic status when we say employee.
Seems like that's the point of it. It's like labor versus management, exploiter versus exploited. And so there's a lot of people who are outside that dichotomy, but including at least some of the exploited's voices and maybe some of the exploiters, just in part to get their ear. And to see what thought processes enable them to, like, you know, sleep at night.
All right, and then the other question in the chat was, what is the best way to make a new member who is a person of color feel welcome without making them feel burdened with educating other members?
Yeah, that's a great question. We're talking about that in my breakout room. If Karina or Patricia, I'm not putting you out there, but I think you'd do this more eloquently and more directly. So thank you.
Though, ideally, I would recommend don't invite them to the diversity subgroup that you hopefully would create. It can be open for them. This is the thing. I would love to let me see, how do I rephrase it? I would love to see us think of just anyone that walked through the door as another volunteer that we're going to nurture, just like we nurture everybody else. We nurture anyone that's interested in writing a letter to the editor. We nurture anyone who is interested in being a spokesperson for a chapter. You know, it's like, it's the same thing. There shouldn't be any special emphasis just because there's a person of color. Of course, we're going to be happy, right? Because it means that it's someone from another community that is interested in our work. So all I tell people is, like, you can be extremely welcome, saying hello, smiling, That's actually the reason I'm in CCL. I walked into my chapter meeting and everybody there was white. So it's kind of scary. But you know what? 20 minutes into the meeting, someone came up to me and they'd be like, "Hi, how are you? I'm such and such." And they had the biggest smile on my face. And I just felt so comfortable that I'm like, okay, I'm going to stay. This is good. I felt safe. And I decided to stay. So that could be my suggestion from my end. Patricia.
Hi, yes, thank you so much. And I agree a lot with what Karina said. One thing I feel, excuse me, that would be really, really interesting is also just getting to know whoever's coming into your chapter. And this goes across the board, but especially in times like these where we are needing to be sensitive to these cultural issues, is to get to know them and their volunteer work. Maybe they have a community garden. Maybe they have a really nice area with picnic benches. And when the time comes, we can, you know, as CCLers in our groups, we can go meet over there and have a community day of service. So it's about, you know, the possibility of future collaborations of give and take, you know, or I'd like to say give and give, because it's both an opportunity to be able to do those things. And also when someone tells me, you know, thank you, I say thank you back, because it's an honor to be able to do something where I get to have that chance. And the same is when we're greeting someone that's a person of color. And also maybe one question you want to think about, and this was brought up to me by an Anglo person, is they said, maybe the question is, what happened in your life that made you feel that you had to do something different for the BIPOC individual? And, you know, maybe reflect back and look within to see where it was you felt that maybe there was something that had to be done. But other than that, I agree with what Karina said, and nurturing our volunteers. And of course, just respect, kindness, having an open mind and a flexible heart is what I say. That's one of the things I usually tell anybody. Thank you so much.
That was great. Thank you, Patricia and Karina. I see Sarah's hand.
Yeah, thanks. I just wanted to add that one thing that sort of I've realized lately that helps make everybody feel welcome when they're new is to make sure we're sort of stopping and explaining things, because there's sort of all this like CCL lingo, and there's a lot of us who've been at it forever, and sometimes the conversation gets really intense, and even though, you know, we've sort of making an effort at the beginning of meetings to orient everybody, I've tried to make more of an effort, you know, okay, when somebody's mentioning, you know, something about HR 763 or something about, you know, Ted Deutsch, you know, okay, stop and say, explain who this is, what this is. So that can help everybody.
Great, thank you. So before we close, I want to make sure we get a screenshot of our meeting so we can share it on social media. So if you feel comfortable, feel free to turn your camera on or off. All right, so on 3, I'm gonna take the picture. All right, 1, 2, 3. Perfect. One more, because everyone blanked. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Perfect. Great. So thank you so much. We've hit our mark for the hour. I really appreciate everyone being here and seeing everyone's faces, and thank you for sharing.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you, Juan. Thank you, Saraly.
Thank you.